He stood quietly in the corner of the Navy gym, mop in one hand, old bucket beside him, his faded blue coveralls damp with sweat and detergent. No one knew his name. To most officers, he was just the janitor who showed up early, cleaned up after their workouts, and vanished before sunrise. But tonight, everything was about to change. Because the man they called, the ghost janitor, was about to step into a sparring ring with one of the most decorated Navy admirals in the country, and what happened next would leave every officer in the gym absolutely speechless. If you're watching this right now, stay till the very end. What this single dad did that night isn't just unbelievable, it's the kind of moment that'll remind you why you should never, ever underestimate quiet people. And if you find yourself inspired before this story ends, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because stories like this one deserve to be heard. It all began a few months earlier, when Ethan Cole, a single father of one, started working nights at the Navy's East Bay training facility. He didn't talk much, didn't share his past. He just worked hard, kept his head down, and left without drawing attention. The officers noticed how disciplined he was, how he folded the towels with military precision, how his posture never slouched, how he called everyone, sir, even though he technically didn't have to. There were rumors. Some said he'd served once. Others said he'd washed out of basic. But no one knew the truth. One night, after hours, Admiral Marcus Hale, a tough, silver-haired veteran known for training SEALs himself, walked into the gym for his late-night sparring session. His usual partner hadn't shown. So when he spotted Ethan mopping near the ring, the Admiral smirked. "Hey, janitor," he called out. "You ever throw a punch?" Ethan froze. The gym went silent. A few young officers stopped mid-workout, their eyes darting between the Admiral and the janitor. Ethan's reply was quiet, calm. "Used to, sir. A long time ago." The Admiral grinned. "Then hop in. For fun." Ethan hesitated. "Sir, I really shouldn't." "That's an order, son," Hale said, tossing him a pair of gloves. The janitor looked down at the gloves for a long moment, then exhaled. Slowly, he set his mop aside. He moved toward the ring with that same quiet, measured grace the officers had seen every night, only now, they realized it wasn't just discipline. It was training. When the bell rang, the Admiral came forward fast, his stance sharp, textbook perfect. But the moment his first jab came, Ethan slipped it like water flowing around stone. Another punch, ducked. A third, parried with surgical precision. In seconds, the Admiral's grin vanished. The officers began whispering, "Who is this guy?" The next exchange came harder. Hale threw a roundhouse combination that could drop a Marine, but Ethan didn't just dodge. He countered. One smooth step inside, a light tap on the Admiral's ribs, just enough to make him grunt and stumble back. "Light on your feet," the Admiral gasped. "Where'd you learn that?" Ethan didn't answer. He simply adjusted his gloves, respectful but focused. The match grew intense. The Admiral gave it everything: skill, strength, speed. But no matter what he tried, Ethan was always one step ahead. His movements were fluid, effortless, not flashy, not aggressive, just efficient. Like a man who'd done this 1,000 times before, and hated every time he had to. After 5 rounds, Hale dropped his gloves, breathing hard. "Enough," he said, stepping back. "You're not a janitor." Ethan nodded softly. "Not anymore, sir." The Admiral stared, realization dawning in his eyes. "Cole, Ethan Cole. You were Iron Ghost, weren't you? Special Operations Command, Task Force 9. Every officer in the room froze. That name, Iron Ghost, was legend. A call sign whispered with reverence. A man who had disappeared from the Navy 10 years earlier after a classified mission went wrong. Ethan looked away. "That was a long time ago, sir. My son needed me more than the Navy did." The room went silent. Even the Admiral's voice softened. "You walked away from a career most men would die for." Ethan gave a faint, tired smile. "I already watched too many die. My boy only had one dad left." The Admiral nodded slowly, eyes heavy with respect. Then, before everyone, he raised Ethan's hand like a champion. "Gentlemen," he said loudly, "this man mops your floors, but once upon a time, he saved your lives. Remember that before you ever judge a man by his uniform." The officers clapped, some even saluting the janitor as he stood there, humbled and stunned. Ethan just smiled, shook his head, and said softly, "I'm just doing my job, sir." same as always. Later that night, the Admiral walked him out of the gym. "You ever think about coming back?" he asked. Ethan looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn touched the sea. "No, sir," he said. "But I'll teach, if you'll let me." From that day on, the janitor no longer worked alone. He began quietly training the new recruits in the early mornings, not as an officer, not as a soldier, but as a man who knew what real strength meant, not in how hard you hit, but in how much you protect. His story spread through the base like wildfire. Soon, young men and women started calling him Coach Cole. But to his son, he was still just Dad, the man who made pancakes every morning before school and never bragged about who he used to be. And if you've made it this far into this story, remember this: greatness doesn't always wear medals or uniforms. Sometimes, it carries a mop, shows up quietly, and does the work no one sees, until the day life asks it to step back into the ring.